Some motorcycles look like spaceships. Some motorcycles look like insects. These motorcycles look like motorcycles. This is a proper motorcycle, the Triumph Speed Twin 1200. Yes, a proper motorbike. Take a look at these things. It's an engine and a frame and wheels. It's elemental, and yet somehow they've made something classic look contemporary with the Speed Twin. It's a little bit of a different take on the Bonneville. The Bonneville is more traditional. The Speed Twin is the more contemporary and more modern looking motorcycle. So for 2025, we've got a whole bunch of new things. We start with the same frame, but then we've got new wheels, we got a new fuel tank. Looks kind of similar, but it's a new fuel tank, more chiseled, Triumph says. Right up top is a new instrument panel with a TFT display, and it's really easy to read. It doesn't quite look as traditional as the old clocks on the Speed Twin, but it is very readable and yet still elemental. It's not overly complicated. A feature of the new clocks, the instrument panel, it's got a USB-C port now, so you can keep your devices charged on the go. If you look at this motorcycle from top to bottom, you see lots of tasty bits. On the RS here, we got the nice brushed aluminum fenders, plenty of other aluminum sprinkled throughout. We've got the base Speed Twin here in white, and we've got the RS in this kind of cool orange. So on the RS, we've got a fully adjustable suspension, Öhlins shocks on the back, fully adjustable, and a Marzocchi adjustable fork. And on the base version, we have a Marzocchi fork, non-adjustable, and preload adjustable shocks. I was initially thinking that, well, I'm going to much prefer the RS because it's adjustable suspension, it's higher end stuff. And yet the base suspension worked quite well for my light body weight. It was really plush and yet controlled. They changed the damping, and the fork they actually made a bit softer, but the shocks, they added some rebound damping. So nice to see Triumph making it better. And as much as I prefer a fully adjustable suspension, I was really happy with the setup on the base model bike. The engine's something I really like because it just looks like a motor. It doesn't look like something stuffed in there with a bunch of hoses. Got an increase in power, 105 PS, which equates to 103 of our horsepowers. And for riding around Mallorca, that was more than enough power. This thing is a tractor, and yet it enjoys being revved up as well. That's where the meat of the power band is. Comes on around 4,500, and then it pulls us really strong from there. Higher redline now, 8,000 RPM, up 500 from previous. So another difference between the standard model and the RS. The RS has the Brembo Stylema brake calipers up front, which are kind of the best in the business. Brakes on the front of the base model are 4-piston radial mount calipers. They're J1 calipers, so not the nice Brembo name brand that we all know. They've got a really firm lever, and they didn't really fall short of this. The Stylemas, I think, maybe a bit more finesse, a bit more precision, but in terms of power, you're not giving up anything by going for the base model. Another difference between the two models, the RS get kind of a suede-like seat cover, which is kind of nice, but they seem to be about the same seat, so about the same amount of comfort. I wouldn't say you'd want to go touring on these, but it's a bench style seat, so you can slide your butt back and change your ergonomics. And ergonomics is another difference. The RS is a little bit sportier. The pegs are a little bit further back and the bars are a little bit further forward. Not too much of a difference, but in terms of fitting a larger rider, I think they might prefer the base model. But the RS is close. I think even bigger riders than I would fit on here just fine. So the motor is very tractable. We've got, it'll pull from as low as 2,000 RPM, comes on around 4,500, and then around 7,000, it's really revving and putting out its maximum power. So you can ride it in two different ways. You can ride it kind of like a big cubic inch twin cylinder bike, or you can rev it out. And at the higher RPM, you can feel some vibration come through. But the kind of riding we're doing where you're going up and down the revs, it was never intrusive. Carrying on with the British terminology, we've got aluminium everywhere. The headlight bucket, brushed aluminium. The brackets too. More aluminium is seen on the flip-top fuel filler cap. It's a nice looking piece. It's one of the things Triumph does really well, the attention to details. Another part I really like about this bike is the muffler. So it looks very clean, and unlike most modern motorcycles where you want to toss the muffler for something that looks better, these things look great. So it sounds deep and mean, and I think this is a great balance of meeting EPA restrictions for noise and yet having an appealing exhaust system. Bonnevilles are nice bikes, classic, traditional. I don't think of them as sport bikes. After riding these around the twisty roads of Mallorca, these do a really good impression of a sport bike. The handling is very intuitive. You don't have to recalibrate your brain to imagine what's going to happen when you tip it into a corner. And even though they're not light motorcycles, the steering inputs result in immediate action, so they feel more agile than you might expect. Further to the engine, the transmission is kind of notchy, but very precise. And on the RS, you get a quick shifter, which is the first time on the modern classic Triumph. It works really well in the downshifts, but in the first couple gears, the upshifts are kind of a little bit lurchy. And so a well-calibrated left hand will do a better job of matching revs to smooth each shift. Also new for the Speed Twin is an IMU, so that's a step up from the previous Speed Twin. It's got cornering ABS and cornering enabled traction control. So that adds a little bit of security. There were some roads we were on today. I had a little bit of gravel, a little bit of shaded areas, and I was happy to have it. On the RS, in addition to the road and rain modes on the standard model, there's a sport mode. And that's one of the distinctions that I preferred the RS, because the traction control on the Space model, it seemed like it always wanted to dial back throttle when you're leaned over in a corner. It didn't seem to be tied with losing traction. It seemed to be just more tied to lean angle. You can switch off the ABS, which I did occasionally just to prove that it would do a wheelie, and they do pretty good wheelies. But the sport mode in the RS, that loosens up the limits of the traction control, and so you can get on the throttle harder while leaned over in the corners, and that was one of the big differences I noticed between the two different versions. So I'm getting on in years, and I'm wondering if I'm being nostalgic in thinking that these bikes are great, or if these bikes really are great. Maybe it was the Spanish wine, maybe it was the paella, but I had a blast railing these things around the corners around here. I didn't feel like I could go really any faster on a sportier bike, so there's a lot of sport baked into these traditional looking bikes. The downside is we've got a price increase. The base model is $13,600 and the RS is now just shy of $16,000. So these aren't cheap motorcycles, but if you walk around them and take a look at all the attention to detail Triumph has slathered on it, you'll think that it's worth the money that they're charging for them. All right, so I've become a big fan of the Speed Twin. I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did, and I think it's a sporty motorcycle and it looks like a proper motorcycle. There's a great balance of nostalgia and modern in this. So what do you think of the Speed Twin? Give us a comment, like and subscribe, of course. It helps out the channel. We'll see you on the next time.